he was homeless. And the heartbreaking thing is he invited me to go to see where he sleeps, and he was telling me he sleeps on the boxes, and then the next day he takes them in for his, for his daily wage.
That's coming up in today's episode. From Asia News Weekly, you're listening to Asia Now, a collection of stories and interviews from the Asia Pacific region. The Seoul Metro area boasts a population of over 25 million people. It's not all the ritz and glitz of Gangnam style. Today, a story of refuse pickers in the Asian capital. Is just one conversation taking place in Asia now. Welcome to Asia Now. I'm your host, Steve Miller. There are some 1.4 million Pyeji Jumnun Saram, or refuse pickers, in Korea. They walk the country streets in all weather and at all hours, searching through garbage for reusable material like iron and steel, but mainly cardboard, and they sell what they find for just pennies a kilo to private junk depots. Those are the words of Daryl Coote, who joins me today. Daryl, welcome to Asia Now.
Thank you for having me.
So Daryl, you chose a very interesting topic, but before we get to it, could you take a few moments and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've been working in South Korea for about the past 5 years as a journalist and editor. Most of that time was on Jeju Island as the assistant editor of the Jeju Weekly. And then after that, I went up to Seoul, worked at Yonhap, and then started freelancing.
This topic, the refuse pickers in Seoul, how did you decide to come up with this piece, which I have to say is really excellent?
Oh, well, thank you very much. It was pretty much born out of curiosity, because anywhere in Korea that you go to, whether it be Seoul, Jeju, Busan, the refuse pickers are essentially just kind of part of the background. They're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. And so it doesn't matter if you're in Gangnam, a richer area, or in one of the less affluent areas in Korea, you see them at any time of the day or at night going through the garbage, picking up predominantly cardboard. And I had no idea. I didn't know anything about them. I was very curious. Was this a government job? Were they homeless? Why were they essentially doing this, and who they were, how much money they made, all that. I had no idea. That's when I started to investigate it further and then see that there was very little to no information about them on the internet in English.
You said that there was little to no information in English. Was there a lot of information in Korean?
Oh, no, not really either. I did find that there is one expert on this topic at a university in the mainland, but he was very hard to get a hold of. And that was about it. There wasn't too much other information aside from the little blurb that was in the Korean encyclopedia that I found.
You mentioned a lot of topics related to these individuals. Who are they? Are they young? Are they old? Retired? Homeless? How much do they make? That's an incredible breadth of information to try and track down, given how little was out there. How did you create a matrix or create a system that would allow you to go about collecting this information?
Well, the first thing I did was go to the streets and try to talk to as many of the refuse pickers as I could. As I had no information about them, I thought that would be just trying to have small conversations, not necessarily on record, but just to try to understand who they are a little bit better. And once I understood how they make their money and their system, their network, I was able to then get in contact with the Resource Recycling Association, who is kind of works on their behalf. And they were founded under the Ministry of Environment to kind of give them some voice, I guess, because before that, no one really knew much, no one really spoke for them because they weren't a collective group. They were just guys and women wandering the streets, picking up garbage and selling it to junk depots. So after I speaking to the Resource Recycling Association, it was getting in contact with the government, trying to check the facts and trying to check the numbers because it's very difficult for people who don't want to be documented to figure out, their demographic, who they are, how many of them there are, and where they live and so forth.
Now, in your piece, you wrote that there is roughly 1.4 million individuals in
Mhm.
Korea living this lifestyle. How did you come up with that number?
That number came to me from the Resource Recycling Association, and it's an estimation because they say that it's based off of each junk depot having not working for them, but they have about 25 refuse pickers per junk depot that brings them on a regular basis cardboard and other garbage that can be reused. And then there's so many of these junk depots in Seoul and in throughout Korea, and that was how they estimated the number. To back that up was also the another law that was passed last year mentioning them directly as refuse pickers for the first time, which does quote to say up more than 1 million. So I felt confident with that number, with that government source, along with the Resource Recycling Association.
What did you learn about their lives? And is it as difficult or even more so than you originally thought?
For some, it's very difficult. When I spoke with Kim Gyung Sup, he was a man that saw walking the back streets of uh, Myeongdong, and he had just two boxes carrying them without a cart in his left hand. And when I spoke to him, it's just poverty. Just gets into his bones, and that's his subsistence, and that's his life. And it was very difficult for him because he couldn't even get social assistance. Some of these people are on social assistance, and that's why they don't want to speak to the media, because if they give their name, then maybe their social assistance will be cut. But he was unable to get social assistance because he had as he told me, he had an adult child, so he couldn't get any social assistance, and he was homeless. And the heartbreaking thing is, he invited me to go to see where he sleeps, and he was telling me he sleeps on the boxes, and then the next day he takes them in for his, for his daily wage, which is when he works hard. He says it's 10,000 won.
There were a few people that you listed in the article that made considerably more.
Hmm. Yeah, Lee Ji-ho was one of the first people I spoke to who kind of gave me a different impression of of who the refuse pickers are, because did he made a decent wage doing it between 50 and 100,000 won a day, and he did not appear homeless, and he said he had a family, and he didn't necessarily like associating himself with other refuse pickers like Kim Gyung Sup. He was actually quite belligerent at times in his language about them because he did not want to be connected with them. And when I asked him about if he was on social assistance and so forth, he did not. He was very adamant and no, that he was not, and he was able to support himself as a refuse picker. But when you look at someone like Kim Jong Seop, it's a drastically different story. It's a drastically different portrayal of who a refuse picker is.
Now, in your conversations,
Mm.
who are these people? I mean, did they fall on bad times, had failed businesses, or did they have some other family circumstances that led them to this? I don't want to say career, but this way of making a wage.
Kim Kyung Gwon of the Resource Recycling Association said it really well when he said that this is like their second life as a refuse picker. They either had a failed business or were unable to work for one reason or another. Like Kim Kyung Sup, he had a disabled right hand, so he couldn't do other manual labor work. And he had a factory that burnt down, and which caused him to go bankrupt. So this is kind of a last resort for some sort of occupation, I guess you could say, to make some sort of subsistence for themselves. And there are occasionally those people that do it, and there are those people who do this not out of necessity. There are those that do it for a little bit of extra money or something to do in retirement, because I see the refuse picker as sort of a remnant of Korea's older, poorer past. So you have these people who have a great work ethic built into them, which helped make Korea the fastest growing economy in the past 50 years. And then when they retire, they have this in them to keep working. So there are some people like that are refuse pickers, but the majority seem to be more fallen on hard times and homeless.
Anything that really surprised you while you were researching this story?
What surprised me, other than the fact that there was so little known about them, so little to read about the refuse pickers, and so little research done into who they are, is that it's very competitive. It's not like they're necessarily banding together to pick up boxes. They they covet the places in their neighborhoods. One of the refuse pickers was telling me that they even had unofficial districts. So if you go into this person's area, the refuse picker A area, you may have like an altercation. There may be a physical fight over picking boxes from somebody else's area.
It's almost like gang territory, per se.
Yeah, a little bit, but I don't know. Wasn't able to figure out how prevalent that was, but that was in areas like Myeongdong, where, for instance, Myeongdong is the very trendy upscale shopping district, so there are lots of boxes there. And wealthier refuse pickers like Lee is that he has business acumen from being a former businessman, so he would be able to make deals with some of the stores to hold on to their boxes and to give them to him personally, while other homeless refuse pickers who don't have the proper, attire, who haven't showered in, let's say, at least a month, the store owners are not gonna be too friendly to allowing them into their stores or wanting to seem to be interacting or doing business with, the likes of those like Kim Kyung-suk.
Seoul is trying to, I guess, the best way of putting it is up its image to become this global city, and has passed a new law to try on streamline the refuse picking industry and have government sanctioned recycling centers. What do you think will be the impact of these new centers or these government licensed centers on the people who are out on the street trying to make a living?
Well, it'll drastically dent their wages, if not eventually make refuse pickers a thing of the past, which is not entirely a negative thing. It's because the project that they're working on is to clean Seoul, make it cleaner, make its appearance better, make its garbage more profitable, and also make it more environmental. Because right now, in every area, every dong in Seoul, there is a garbage disposal plant, essentially. And so with modernizing its garbage recycling industry, those of the refuse pickers who are this remnant of a former Korea will most probably be out of work. There won't be any unless they are working specifically for the Seoul government.
Is this the end of the story for you?
I will be keeping up on this story because there are more things that are still going on. Like just the other day, I called up some of my sources and was told that they're going to take out 90% of those junk depots from within Seoul. But the date was murky. But once that happens, that will drastically cut the ability of a refuse worker to make money, if not entirely.
Daryl, thank you very much for joining me today.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
I'd like to thank Daryl again for joining me today. You can read his article by following the link in our show notes, and you can connect with him on Twitter. His ID is @DarylCoots. You can also download this and every single show from our website, iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn. And if you enjoyed the episode, please share it with your friends and subscribe so you won't miss the next one. If you're an iTunes or Stitcher user, could you do me a huge favor? It only takes a few seconds, but could you please rate and review the show? It's how podcasts get featured and would mean so much to me. If you want to stay in contact, you can connect with us via Facebook and Twitter. The address is facebook.com/AsianNewsWeekly or at Asian News Weekly on Twitter. You can also send email if you have any questions or feedback about the show. Just drop a line to asiannewsweekly@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. For Asia Now, I'm Steve Miller. Asia Now is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License.